about 2 weeks ago, he texted me, "How are you? What are you doing? Are you doing stand up?" And I answered him with, much too many words. And then I didn't hear back. And then last week, I got a text, and it just said, "I love you." And I didn't say much back. I just said, "I love you, Norm." And that was my last communication with him. But he didn't mince words, and he didn't mince emotions. So he wasn't out doing bullshit. He wasn't just out to, oh, here's the emotional moment in a telethon where we pretend we're feeling something so we can. One of the gifts of my life is that he loved me and that I loved him. Hell, I'm always going to love him. I mean, there's not another guy like this guy.
I've had this gnawing regret this last day and a half, and it's reading all this praise for Norm, which again I believe is completely justified and will endure. And it's been a regret that he didn't get to experience this. He took so much flack in his career. He took so much shit. And yes, he knew that he had fans, but I wish, it's a common wish for people, but I wish he had been able to read the stuff that's being written about him. I wish he knew how beloved he is, and also how in awe comedians are of what he did and what he meant, and how
how important he was to the people who are probably the most important people in the world to him.
Yeah. And he, I wish he knew that. And that's the one regret he kept his illness a complete secret from everybody. And that was his choice, and I respect that choice.
See how it's done.
But selfishly for me, I wish I had the chance, and I wish a lot of us wish we had the chance to go in and tell him, you are a singular artist, and you've really made a huge difference. And if nothing else, I don't know of anybody that could make me laugh like that.
Because so many people pretend that they don't give a fuck. Both in my business and in other businesses. I don't give a fuck. Hey, you know me. I don't give a fuck. Those people that advertise them. That guy clearly, in the best way, didn't give a fuck. He really cared about people and stuff, but he did what he wanted to do. And when he was on SNL, how big a gig that was. Because there was so few channels, the internet hadn't blown up yet. And even with basic cable and everything, it was still, if you were on Saturday Night Live and you were doing Weekend Update, it was one of the most coveted gigs a comedian could have. And you were part of this lineage of, at that point it was, Chevy Chase, Jane Curtin, right on through to Dennis Miller's reign when he did it. And, did Colin Quinn come after? I think Colin came after, but it was always just the best of the best comics that they had doing it, and continued on with Tina Fey and all of them. And no one's walking away from that job. And if some suit at NBC tells you they don't like the jokes you're doing and be funnier, you're shaking in your. I'd be like, oh fuck, I'm going to lose this big gig. I don't want to get fired. I don't want to piss these people off or whatever. I guess he was doing all those OJ jokes, and I forget how the story went. There was somebody there that knew OJ or something, and was telling Norm to back off and move on to something else. So what does Norm do? He just doubles down and he just does even more OJ jokes which is like, the balls that took to do that. And he ended up losing the gig. He got fired. And people loved him and he was fucking hilarious, but he didn't back down to the big fucking guy over there, and he ended up losing the gig. So, as luck would have it, I think it was Dirty Work, came out like a year and a half later or so. So he has to promote it, and he's on the press thing. So Lauren has him back and has him host the show. And I remember he went out there, and his opening joke, he just comes out. And he was just like, something like this. Yeah, it's good to be back. I actually got fired from this show about a year and a half ago because they said I wasn't funny. And now here I am. I'm hosting the show. So that means one of two things. Either I got a lot funnier or this show sucks.
And one of the things that speaks to, I was having a conversation with Jim Downey, and in the wake of Norm's death, and Jim Downey, and I was trying to get to what is it that made Norm so different, and he reminded me. He said, on Weekend Update, we would do there's a dress rehearsal, which I know because I worked at Saturday Night Live. There's a dress rehearsal, and he said the best way to test a joke on Weekend Update is at dress rehearsal. If it does well at dress rehearsal, it will do well on air. If it doesn't do well at dress rehearsal, it will bomb on air. It's the best way to test it. And he said that Norm would do a joke at dress rehearsal that they both loved, and it would get nothing. And when Weekend Update was over, Jim would say, yeah, it's too bad that joke didn't do well. And Norm would say, like, yeah, I know, but we got to do it. So he would do jokes that he knew were going to get nothing.
Yeah.
If he thought the joke was worthwhile, he didn't give a shit. Mm-hmm. Now, that is very uncommon. That is very...
Well, he never pandered.
He didn't pander at all. And that takes... that's what made me think about the line you said so many years ago, Andy. Like, it almost terrifies me, his fearlessness, because it was the thing he did so many times on our show, which I thought was absolutely outrageous, was he would launch into these long stories that you quickly realized were farmers' daughter jokes,
or shaggy dog
stories,
just absolute horseshit,
horseshit stories. And he would go on and on and on. And I'm so happy that the moth joke has been getting circulated so much from our Tonight Show, because it is completely outrageous what he's doing. It is, it's the Tonight Show. And he is telling this very long story, and he's taking all the time in the world. And I love it just because even though I was there, I'm delighted every time I see it.
Yeah.
I every time I see it, I'm delighted with it, because what he's doing breaks every rule. Brevity is the soul of wit. That is the rule.
Yeah.
Keep it, and man, he completely, like Picasso, blew up the form. He goes and he tells this joke forever, and then finally gets to this punchline, and you can see that everyone's delighted, but he has broken every rule in the book. And I was talking to Lori Joe, and I asked her if it's okay if I related this, and she said it was okay. But she said that not too long ago, someone asked Norm about the moth story that he told on our Tonight Show, and that she said, the guy wanted to know what made you have the nerve to do that, and that he said that it was that goddamn Frank Smiley. He said, I was only supposed to do one segment. And then suddenly in the commercial break, Frank came over and said, like, you're doing another one. Because whenever I had Norm, I was greedy. I wanted more Norm. I always wanted more Norm. And so he didn't know that we were going to ask him to do a second segment. He had nothing planned, absolutely nothing planned. And so as recently as like not that long ago, I think this was a couple of months ago, he was telling somebody, damn it, that was Frank Smiley. Hey, get back out there. Conan wants more.
So he heard that joke from Colin Quinn. And he did the segment. And it was he had 7 minutes prepared.
Yeah.
And so he basically, you say, and then he's done. You say, we'll be right back with more Norm. And he goes, I've got nothing to say.
Yeah.
So then he remembered the Colin joke, and it was a 20-second joke. So he asked you, how long is the segment? And he was hoping you'd say 20 seconds.
Right.
But you said 7 minutes.
Yep.
So it became a 7-minute joke.
Yeah, and he's doing that. This has to be understood. He's doing this on the fly.
Yep.
So his way to slow it down that he came up with on the fly is he invents...
It's a Chekhov play.
It's a Chekhov play.
With Russian names.
And there's a sadness, an ineffable sadness in life weighing on the character's soul. And and I'm thinking, who... I've never met anybody who would take that chance and make that choice. And I'll never meet anybody like him again.
He was the ballsiest comedian in the history of comedians. He
was taking that and he was saying, like, the joke doesn't matter. Like that, he would watching that, seeing that clip again. You're getting to see his brain. Yeah. He's just showing you his brain. And the notion that the joke is the thing. The joke isn't the thing.
No, it's the journey.
It's taking a stroll through this guy's brain and hearing the choices that he makes and what he has to say. And and I think that was like kind of what, like, there was so much of like what he would say, like, well, that doesn't matter, this matters. And what mattered to him was his own self-expression, was spreading his own kind of genius and his own point of view. Like, there's a clip out, he did some roast, and I remember seeing it at the time. I can't remember who it was that he was roasting, but all his jokes are things.
It was Bob Saget.
Was it Bob Saget?
Yes. And it was unbelievable.
It was, but all the jokes were things like, Bob often has a lot of things on, Bob often has things on his mind. It's when he's wearing a hat. Like, it was all these dad jokes, intentionally bombed.
Right.
And then I didn't even know this, but I remember feeling like, okay, Norm, I mean, these are funny, and you're funny doing them because you can't help but be funny, but this feels a little hostile, why are you breaking from what this, you were invited to a costume party and you came, in a tuxedo, whatever. He didn't play by the rules of the thing. Turns out the producers told him, really go for it. Really get him. And Norm was like, yeah, you're going to tell me what to do. Here, I'll do this. I'll do the softest, lamest dad jokes I can come up with.
Yeah.
And it was just a fuck you to the producers. It looked weird at the time. It was funny in a way, but it still was just like, it was Norm doing what the fuck he wanted to do.
It was still hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's like Norm couldn't not be funny.
Yeah.